Hey everyone, I am just checking to see if I'm live. Let's hope that this is connected. And yeah, let's do this. So I'm just checking in. If you are starting to come in, good gosh, let me know. Touch base, say hi. I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong window again. Give me a minute while I'm checking. Huh? All right. Well, the computer says I'm live. Let me know if you're here. I, again, I don't see messages or comments. Let me try again. I'm going to keep talking while we check in. I think I'm live. I think I'm live. If you are here, let me know. Okay, I'm in the right space. Yes. Hi, Janet. Thank you so much. Okay, yay. I see messages and comments. Oh, all right. Let's get started because I do want to respect everyone's time and this is good. So we're on why big changes don't last. I know. I had somebody send me a message asking me, what the? Anyways, we'll dig in a little bit. So, welcome everyone. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're here live, I I want to celebrate you for being live. I really, really appreciate it. But I also want to take a little bit of time for you to celebrate yourself because you have decided that this little bit of time is important to you. If you're watching on the replay, because I know time change, other commitments, they're huge in our life, and I appreciate the time that you have taken to come back to listen to this. And if you don't get it, I'm going to put it into the group, but I will also make sure that if you send me a DM, I will send it to you. Okay, I'll send you the video, that is. So I want you to start thinking about, let me see. Take a deep breath. I was so worried that my live wasn't going to be here, but thanks, Janet, for confirming. Now, if you're following along with my lives over the last couple of weeks, we've been having a very specific conversation over many of them. And I have to put my hair up because, oh my gosh, this weather has been incredible. Okay. So we started about talking about boundaries. And then I challenged the idea that your boundaries are the problem, or maybe they're not. Because sometimes the real issue happens before you ever get to the boundary. It's that moment where you know that you want or need something, and then instead of following through on your needs and your wants, you totally ignore yourself. Then last week we talked about confidence, and I challenged another idea of maybe you don't lack confidence. Maybe you've been conditioned, raised to be the strong one, the reliable one, the one that helps everyone, the one who doesn't need much. But is that really the truth? You're the one who everyone turns to. You're the one that keeps everything running. And today I want to talk about what happens when you start seeing all of this. Because this is where I think a lot of women get frustrated. They finally have the realization that they understand the pattern, they start seeing it on a daily basis, and they know what they're doing. Then they decide, that's it, I'm changing. And maybe they do for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. They start saying no. They stop answering messages immediately. They protect their evenings. They start to ask for help. They stop explaining every decision that they've made, and they start choosing themselves. And it feels amazing until life happens. Someone gets upset. Someone pushes back, and they start to feel guilty. An old situation comes up, and then they're back doing exactly what they were doing before. And then they say to themselves, see, I can't change. This is just who I am. I'm obviously not strong enough. Or maybe it's, I need to work on myself more. But what if the problem isn't that you failed? What if you were simply expecting one big moment of change to undo a pattern that is built through thousands of tiny moments? That's what I want to talk to you about today. Because I don't think real change happens in one dramatic conversation. It's built in the small changes, usually happens in 1 second, small moments nobody else sees, in the small pauses where we start to take attention to. Oh, I'd like to share a story from one of my potential clients who said that she's more than willing to allow this to happen. So imagine that you've been frustrated with your partner for months. You've always been the one to remember everything, the appointments, the shopping, the family plans, daily things that need to be done. And you've been getting more and more resentful about being that person. So eventually you think, that's it, we need to have a serious conversation. And you do. You finally tell them everything. You explain how exhausted you are. You explain that you feel taken for granted. You tell them what needs to change. And maybe they really listen to you. Maybe their reaction is, I had no idea you felt that way. How can I do better? And for a little while, things change. I mean, we've all had those conversations, haven't we? And for a little while, things do change. But then a few weeks down the road, you're back to the same place. You're reminding. You're organizing. You're the one doing. And perhaps you're actually taking over again. And this time, the resentment isn't something small, it's bigger. You become a little bit angrier, maybe furious. And you ask yourself, why am I back here again? But here's what might have happened. The conversation wasn't the problem. The problem is the pattern existed in the hundreds of tiny moments after the conversation. Your partner asks, Did you remember to book the appointment? And instead of saying, no, I didn't, would you? You say, no, I didn't, but don't worry, I'll do it. And perhaps your partner asks, what are we doing about Mom's birthday? And you immediately take over because something needs to be organized. You handle it. Not because you're consciously choosing to do that. It's because it's automatic for you. And maybe it's because you've always done it. But I'd like you to stop and think that perhaps your partner was asking a question. And inside of you, something snapped and heard, what are you doing for Mom's birthday? What are you organizing for Mom's birthday? And perhaps your partner was just asking the question. What are we doing about Mom's birthday? So you can have a big conversation, but in the small moments, it stays the same. The pattern remains. This is the part I really want you to hear. And we often think, first I change, then I feel different, then I become confident, then I trust myself. But it's usually the other way around. You make the small choice. Then you survive the discomfort. Then you realize, oh, I can do that. Then you do it again and again. And eventually, your brain begins to understand this is who we are now. That's how identity changes. Not through one huge conversation, one huge decision, through many small, repetitious decisions. Another story I'd like you to hear is think about someone who keeps saying, one day I'm going to start taking better care of myself. One day I'm going to stop overcommitting to everything and everyone. One day I'm going to put myself first. One day I'll finally have the confidence to make the changes I know I need to make. And she's waiting for that feeling. She's waiting to wake up one morning and suddenly feel different, more confident, more certain, more motivated. But that morning doesn't come because the identity doesn't usually change first. The action comes first. You don't become someone who trusts herself and then start making decisions. You start by making the decisions, and you become someone who trusts herself. You don't become someone who respects her own time and then start protecting it. You start protecting your time, and then you become someone who respects her own time. You don't become someone who believes her needs matter and then start honoring them. You need to start honoring your needs first for you to believe it. So what does that usually look like in real life? It's actually incredibly ordinary. It looks like saying, let me think about it, instead of sure. It looks like leaving a message unanswered for longer than you would normally respond to it because you're busy. You're taking care of something else at the moment. It looks like saying, yeah, I don't want to, without writing a 5-minute explanation. It looks like letting someone else solve a problem that you would normally take over. And perhaps it's going to bed instead of finishing that one last thing. I want you to think about that freedom. It looks like asking yourself first, what do I want? And waiting long enough to hear the answer. Because sometimes that answer takes time to come. None of those moments look transformational. Someone isn't going to clap and applaud, and maybe no one else will notice, but you will. That's important because that's you building your evidence. Evidence that you listen to yourself. The evidence that you can survive someone else's disappointment when you say no. The evidence that you don't have to fix everything for everyone. There are other people that can do it. And you will survive that. Evidence that your needs don't automatically become less important because someone else has needs. Evidence that you can make a decision without getting everyone's approval. That is how self-trust is built. It's important. I used to work way back when, part-time job at a clothing store. And I can't tell you the number of women that would come in, try on an outfit, and say, what do you think? Do I look good in this? What do you think? And I would always ask them, what do you think? How do you feel in that outfit? Because you are the one that is wearing it. That is a decision that you can make yourself without seeking anyone else's approval. So let me ask you, what are your thoughts? Why do we keep waiting for the big moment to happen? Let me check it. Yes, you're right. That's awesome, Janet. It is important to learn not to overbook. So why we keep waiting for the big moment? It's because the big moment feels easier. If I have one big conversation, then surely everything will change. And if I finally tell them how I feel, they will understand. And once I get confident, I'll start saying no. And once I start saying no, maybe I'll stop people pleasing. But a breakthrough gives you awareness. It doesn't automatically give you the new pattern. The pattern changes through repetition, just like any habit. And that's the good news, because it means you don't need to overhaul your entire life tomorrow. You don't need to suddenly become fearless. You don't need to become someone who never feels guilty. You simply need to start making different choices in the small moments. Taking the pause and listening. And here's where I think something really beautiful happens. At first, you may have to think about it. Should I say yes? Do I actually want to do this? Can I let someone else handle it? It feels awkward. Trust me, it feels awkward. Then eventually you pause automatically. And then you notice your needs come more quickly. And then you start making choices that feel more natural. And one day down the road, you realize I'm not fighting with myself about this anymore. That's the identity shift. You're becoming someone who listens to herself. So this week, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick 5 things. I know that's a lot. I don't want you to reinvent your life. Pick one of those 5 things. One small place where you regularly abandon yourself. Maybe it's your phone, maybe it's work, maybe it's with your family or your partner. Maybe it's how you spend your evenings, or maybe it's about how you're always available. Pick one. And every time you make a different choice, write it down. Not as a productivity exercise, as evidence. Maybe you said, let me think about it. Write it down. Maybe you didn't volunteer to take over a project that needed help. Write that down. Maybe you actually rested. Write it down. Maybe you said no and someone was disappointed. Write it down. You're creating a record that says, I am capable of choosing myself. Because when you're trying to change deeply ingrained patterns, you need evidence. Not perfection, evidence. So let's bring this all together. If you take nothing else from today's live, I want you to remember 3 things. Number 1, stop waiting for the big moment. You don't need the perfect conversation. You don't need a dramatic breakthrough. You don't need to wake up one morning feeling completely different. The change you're looking for is probably going to happen in much smaller moments. Number 2, don't mistake discomfort for failure. When you start doing something differently, you may feel guilty. You may feel selfish, or you may feel uncomfortable. This doesn't necessarily mean that you've done anything wrong or that you've made the wrong choice. Other people may push back, and that starts your guilty feelings to come back up. That guilty feeling 10 minutes after you say no isn't a verdict, it's just something that's unfamiliar. Sometimes it simply means that you're doing something you've never allowed yourself to do before. Let the discomfort be there without immediately using it as a reason to go back onto your words and fall back into your old pattern. Number 3, collect evidence. Every time you make a choice that honors you, write it down. Remember it, because self-trust isn't built by telling yourself, I trust myself. It's built by giving yourself the reason to trust yourself. One small decision at a time. One honest answer, one boundary, one pause. That's how the identity changes. And I want you to remember that you don't choose yourself because you're finally becoming the woman who trusts herself. You choose the woman who trusts herself because you've chosen who you are. You become that woman. That's the work. And it doesn't have to be dramatic to be transformational. Now, if you're following along with me through these lives, we've been building something here. And If something in today's live resonated with you, I want you to follow along with the posts because they're going to go into it a little deeper and break it down. And if you want to write it down in the Facebook group or send me a DM, I will honor those shares. Because whether you share it with yourself or with all of us or with just me, that is evidence. So I want you to start noticing yourself in your real life. So this week, don't try to change everything. Pick the one small thing, one moment where you normally abandon yourself, and do it differently. Notice what happens. And tell me in the comments, what is one small choice that you're going to make differently this week? I would love to hear it. Because remember, the goal isn't to become a different woman overnight. The goal is to become someone who can trust herself, one small choice at a time. Thanks, everyone, and have the most amazing day. Talk soon.